Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Rogers, and on behalf of the ADDitude team, I'm so pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled Squeezed in the Sandwich Generation, How to Manage ADHD in Your Children as well as your parents. And today we are so pleased to have with us Danna McDonald, who will be leading today's conversation. Danna is a registered marriage and family therapist and a registered social worker in Canada. She is supervising qualifying with the Canadian Association of Marriage and Family and a counselor at the University of Manitoba. Her areas of clinical expertise include eating disorders, self-compassion, emotion-focused family therapy, mindfulness, trauma, and systems work. So today, Danna is going to talk to us about the impact of ADHD across generations, and specifically how to survive as the proverbial jam in the sandwich. And that is the caregiver for neurodivergent children and neurodivergent parents, as well as yourself. As you might imagine, we're going to touch today on executive function challenges, emotional dysregulation, overwhelm, and much more. As one registrant for today's event wrote to us in the registration, I've been a caregiver to my mother for the last 10 years, and the stress of managing being a mom to neurodiverse children, an employee, and a wife on top of caring for my mother seems absolutely unbearable at times. I don't understand how others manage it all. So we are here today to let you know you're not alone and to give you some strategies for this time of life. And we'd actually like to begin today to learn a little bit more about you all. So we're going to ask a poll question to our live audience. And I'm going to toggle over there. We'd like to know that if you are the jelly holding together your family sandwich, what are the primary challenges with this dual caregiving role? We're trying to get a sense of where the biggest need is. So please choose up to sort of 3 challenges there. That'll help us during the Q&A. And speaking of which, for the most common answers to questions that you might have about slides, transcripts, and certificates of attendance, you can click on the FAQ tab of your webinar screen at any time. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you visit attitudemag.com/subscribe to sign up for ADDitude Magazine for yourself or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. You can click the magazine tab on your screen to sign up and get our groundbreaking spring 2024 issue. And finally, the sponsor of today's webinar is Play Attention. Research conducted at Tufts University School of Medicine demonstrates that play attention improves attention, behavior, executive function, and overall performance. Harnessing cutting-edge, NASA-inspired technology, Play Attention offers a customized program for children and adults. Your dedicated personal executive function coach will tailor a plan for each family member to improve executive function and self-regulation. Home and professional programs are available. Contact Play Attention at 828-676-2240 or click the link on your screen to schedule your free consultation. You can also visit playattention.com to learn more. ADDitude thanks our sponsors for supporting these webinars. Sponsorship has no influence on speaker selection or webinar content. Okay, with all of that out of the way, I'm so pleased to welcome Danna McDonald. Thank you so much for joining us today, Danna, and for leading this really important conversation.
Well, thank you so very much for having me here. I'm really excited to be speaking to everyone about this topic because it's relevant to me professionally and also personally as well too. If anyone had a chance to read my blog post that I'd done recently, this is also part of my own story, and within that, I've really found some peace and some new tools, and it's really changed my relationships with both my kids and my parents as well too. So I hope that it's helpful for other people that are watching today as well. And I hope it does lessen some of the isolation that I really got a sense that people are feeling, because that is one of the hardest parts for us, right? Is just feeling that we're alone in the struggle. Before we kind of jump into things, though, I do want to acknowledge that my own workplace and my home are located on the original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Red River Métis. So for me, as someone living in Canada, it's really important for me to be committed to reconciliation and to continue learning with humility and curiosity, and to honor Indigenous ways of knowing and healing in my work as a counselor, and just as an individual working in the world as well, too. So I just want to make sure that I share that as well, just so you know where I'm located and situated. I'm just going to. So just in terms of goals for today. So as you heard, this is sort of part of my personal story and also part of my professional work. As a marriage and family therapist, I work with families, coming from all sorts of different configurations. And ADHD is a pretty common concern that I've heard of. Wasn't until a little bit more recently that I started thinking about my own daughter within that context as well, too. And then my mom connected with me, wondering about her possibility of her having ADHD as well, too. And that it really changed my relationship with her. It gave me a new lens to see things through. And then I started thinking about myself, and within that process, also realized that, I'm the part of the jam in the sandwich, and also someone with ADHD too. But it has really been transformative for us. So I hope that, part of that personal experience will shine through as well too. So I know everyone here already has a good sense of this, but adjust my screen for a sec. I want to talk a little bit about what some of the challenges are in a multi-generational ADHD family. I get the sense that most people here know that already, right? You know what you're feeling, but I just want to name some of them out loud. And so I'm also going to be talking about self-compassion, and that's a bit of a strategy and a tool and sort of an overarching approach as well. It's something that's been really important for me. I've also used it pretty consistently in my clinical work with families and with individuals. It's something that can really shift our approach to ourselves and any type of changes that we're going to try to make. And then I'm also going to talk about some different tools and ideas to hopefully make things feel more manageable for you and for your family members and everyone in the big picture. So there we go. Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about the sandwich. So we all kind of know what that might feel like for us already. If you imagine, and again, all of our families are going to look different, right? We're all individuals, and all of our families are individual as well too. No two families are going to be the same. But just for an example, if you imagine on one end, one of those slices of bread is going to be our grandparent, and chances our grandparent might be in let's say the baby boom generation. In terms of media, they grew up with radio and television as their main forms of media. For the most part, and I'm not talking about them as individuals, but just as an overarching generational, way of being, coming from all different places. There wasn't a lot of discussion about mental health or emotions. That came from different places, and that comes from different reasons as well too. When we think about what was happening in the world, World War II had just ended. And one of the big pieces when people went off to fight in that war is that they really needed to sort of pack in their own emotions, right? Like do it for the country, do it for the greater good, not necessarily think about how they were feeling about things. So that was actually an important strategy that they were using to be able to cope with that. As well, many of our grandparents might have been new immigrants to the country that we're living in as well too. They might have had to work extremely hard, maybe 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table. So again, you might not have had time to really think about how they were feeling. Or it might have been one of those things where it's like, well, I can't stop to think about how I'm feeling because that might kind of derail all the things that I'm doing. So just wanted to note that it's not necessarily a choice that people are making. It's really a bigger generational piece. When it comes to the workplace, usually there was a lot of that sense of working hard, committing to one job for the long term. They tend to like to communicate by phone call. That's often sort of the main way of connecting. And when it comes to money, for a lot of the baby boom generation, we think of them making savings and investing. Now, on the other end of the sandwich, we've got let's say if you have a teen in the house, I'm not sure how many of our viewers might have a teen or multiple teens or younger kids around too. If you have a teen, your teen is probably a member of Gen Z. So they have grown up in a world where social media, smartphones are totally normal, right? That is their reality. One of the things that I really notice with my teen is that they talk really openly about mental health, therapy, physical health. It's normalized for them. They talk about emotions, they talk about it at school, they talk about it on social media. Totally different than my parents' generation. They're going to be probably experiencing some hormonal changes because they're teens. When it comes to the workplace, they're often sort of focused on quick results. Although again, they're young, so that's going to shift over the years too. Their favorite way of communicating, I would say, is probably through the DMs, right? They instant messaging or direct messaging, through whatever app they happen to be using. And often they'll sort of see spending money or the focus on money as being a form of self-care. And again, that's going to keep shifting and evolving as they get older too. But right now, that's kind of what we often see. And then there's the parent, right? So if you are that parent, you're the jam in the sandwich or the jelly in the sandwich. You might be Gen X, you might be a millennial, somewhere in there. You probably grew up with like music videos on TV. If you're in Canada, like I am, that might be Much Music. If you're American, that's probably MTV. We started seeing the internet and cell phones, and technology really shifted. We also saw a growing public health awareness that people started talking a little bit more about emotions and physical health and sexual health throughout the 80s and 90s as well too. A lot of the focus when it comes to work for Gen Xers and millennials is on a work-life balance, which is something, a lot of us, we kind of work to figure that out every day. We might also be dealing with hormonal changes. Maybe it's menopause or perimenopause. When it comes to communication, probably really like your emails. I sure know that I do. And for us, debt has also been normalized, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it just kind of is, right? It's been a means for us to maybe obtain some of the things that we need in life, but it's maybe a different financial picture than our parents would have had. So now the challenges that we face, I know everyone here knows that really well already, but I just want to name some of them and a few others that I didn't list on here. But the majority of us are probably dealing with conflicting demands, right? Kiddos, you've got teenagers, maybe you have adult children, and then your parents are aging at the same time, and they need increased levels of care. They might be experiencing maybe the onset of dementia or like some Alzheimer's or other chronic illnesses happening for them, but they might need you more and need you differently than they might have needed you in the past. And they might be far away, like they might be in your neighborhood, but they might not be. It can be a really challenging thing. They're going to come with sometimes like we're going to have very different beliefs about education, mental health, how we parent our kids. I heard that a lot in the comments as well too. Different beliefs about communication, technology, how fast we get in touch with each other, how fast you might respond to something. And then at the same time, we're dealing with our own executive function issues, and we're maybe watching them experience that as well too. Maybe that's around impulse control. Maybe it's about organization. But there's all of these different pieces that, too much stuff. Meal prep, grocery shopping, planning ahead, coordinating schedules. There's so many things that we're experiencing are being pulled in different directions. So everyone knows that really well. So I won't spend too much time on that side in particular. But one of the challenges when we think of us in this sandwich, right, we're the jam in the sandwich and we're being pulled and trying to do all this different stuff, is that for so many of us ADHD folks is that we're often carrying a lot of that negative self-talk inside. Many of you might have seen this already, this statistic in particular, but the average child with ADHD receives way, way more negative messages than their non-ADHD. I was thinking of putting a poll in here because I was wondering how many more do you think it is? Because it's a whole lot more. It's actually 20,000 more negative messages than their non-ADHD. And to think that those kiddos are carrying that around with them, right? Like our kids are carrying that around if they experience ADHD, and we're sometimes carrying it around. It's one of those things where it's almost like we've got this lens that we're kind of seeing ourselves and the world through, because we internalize those messages whether we want to or not. No matter where they're coming from, we hold those inside of us, and that can create stress. It can make us feel really dysregulated, and so many folks who have ADHD are also really deep feelers. It's one of those challenges where we might be dealing with emotion regulation, but it also can feel positive things really deeply too. But when it comes to this negative self-talk, that means that it can impact us so deeply because we feel it so deeply. And that can impact our self-esteem and self-confidence as well too. So how do we deal with it? Some of us, we hear it, we feel it, we might be challenging it, but a lot of people are also overcompensating. I'm sure that's probably the case for a lot of folks in the room. where we end up doing more than we need to do, or we work extra hard or pick up extra projects. Trying to make sure that everything's kind of going for other people, trying to make sure that everything, is in line. And sometimes we're masking as well too, and pretending everything is okay when it's not. And that takes energy, right? Like that's not something you can just do. And, it doesn't take something away from you, right? Like it really does take energy to kind of keep that mask on as well too. So just to think about that, many of us are kind of carrying those negative messages from inside, and our kiddos might be carrying that, and our parents might be carrying that too, right? So in the same time that we might be overcompensating, our parents might have been doing that too, right? They might have felt like they were spinning for a long time as well. So just to kind of think about that, kind of hold that with you as well. All right. So I just want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite tools or lenses that I use in lots of forms of my work. And that is self-compassion. So self-compassion is an idea that's really been brought into the mainstream by Kristen Neff and Tara Brach, practitioners, and Kristen Neff is a researcher as well too. So self-compassion is it's almost another lens that we can kind of put on ourselves and put on the work that we're doing. It's a way of approaching ourselves in the same way that we would approach a friend. So oftentimes we've got this negative self-talk and we're so hard on each other. We're so hard on ourselves, pardon me. And at the same time, if your friend comes to you and they are having the same struggle, you treat them totally differently, right? Like you would be, kind and patient and compassionate. You take the time to listen to them. You might reassure them that they're doing the best that they can and doing a great job. And at the same time, when you do the same thing, let's say you forget something at the grocery store, or you lose your keys for the 10th time, we can be so hard on ourselves, right? We never say the same things that we say to ourselves to a friend. So self-compassion is kind of flipping that around, right? Like turning that around in a way that we bring that to the relationship that we have with ourselves as well too. So rather than being critical, judgmental, harsh, mean, right? Rather than just having that voice kind of going, we bring compassion and kindness and maybe a little bit of softness, non-judgment and warmth, right? So we kind of slow things down and approach ourselves in that same way. Lots of time when I talk about this with people, they're kind of like, okay, listen, Danna, if I start doing that, I'm just not going to do anything, right? Like if I stop pushing myself and stop being so hard on myself, what if I just don't get anything done anymore? And I think that is a really good example of that negative ADHD voice in our head as well too. It's one of those things we kind of need to challenge, because realistically, you can change things, right? Like you can shift and be a little bit more self-compassionate. It does not mean that you're just going to stop doing everything, right? You're just going to be a little bit gentle on yourself. You can be compassionate and you can still be productive, right? Those things can definitely exist at the same time. And self-compassion is not just a nice idea. There's research on it that is really fantastic, and it shows that it decreases shame. And I know a lot of people are carrying shame around with them, right? For not doing enough, or not being good enough, or not being able to juggle all these balls, or to hold up this sandwich in the right way. It can improve depression symptoms, and increase rumination, which I think is really important when we think of our ADHD brains, and avoidance. And that's a strategy a lot of people like to look at as well too, or might use as well too. So when we're thinking of maybe bringing self-compassion into our lives, I often think of it, and again, I'm borrowing this from Kristen Neff. So this is one of her frameworks of looking at self-compassion. We think of 3 real areas of it. One is self-kindness versus self-judgment. So that's kind of what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, where we're starting to be more kind, gentle, compassionate with ourselves, rather than having that critical, kind of bullying voice that's kind of running in our head. So we sort of shift that from mean, judgmental voice into a kinder and more compassionate way of speaking to ourselves. The next part is mindfulness versus over-identification. And I'll start with over-identification. Over-identification is that idea that if I'm feeling something, it's got to be true. It's me, right? If I've got this thought, or if I mess something up and I feel like a failure, well, I must be a failure, right? And I failed at that. So that's part of what defines me. It's a really sticky trap for us to get stuck in, because so many of us, we equate who we are with what we do in the world. And that definitely relates to parenting and taking care of our families. But it's really important that we kind of shift that away, right? And we move to a more mindful perspective where we can feel shame. That doesn't mean that we should be alone or unlovable. We can we can fail at something, we can forget something. That doesn't mean we're a failure, right? Like that failure is just one event that's happened for us. So we just notice things, name them for what they are in a non-judgmental way, and just sort of let them be, right? Just to kind of move along, let it float away. The last part, and this is the part, as I was reading through your comments, this is the part that really resonated with me, and I hope it resonates with you as well too, is the idea of common humanity versus isolation. And for us in this ADHD sandwich, so often we feel like we are alone, right? Like it is just us. We're so busy. We don't have enough time to connect to our friends. You know, people feel pulled in all these different directions. You're running all the time. You've got dysregulated family members. That feels like it's your fault. So many things. We feel so alone. Common humanity is sort of, looking at that in a different way. That like, no, you're not alone in that struggle, right? And all human beings, we all struggle, right? Like we all experience pain and big emotions, and we all suffer at times, and we all like forget our keys and, make mistakes. That's part of our human experience. It's not just us, right? Like it's not just this personal failing. And that for folks with ADHD is so, so important, because oftentimes we're comparing ourselves and sometimes other members of our family or our family as a whole to neurotypical folks, and maybe their ability to organize or juggle things or make sure all the laundry's clean, or to make arrangements for family members, manage bills. It is more challenging, right? Like it's not a fair comparison. And just recognizing that we're not alone. This is a common struggle, especially for families where ADHD is part of that sandwich. So I hope you can kind of take that with you. So for self-compassion, I want you to just carry that in your mind for the rest of this presentation that we're going to be talking through today as well too. And as we talk about some of these other aspects, just kind of keeping that as part of the story, or a lens that maybe you can see it through. So my first suggestion for everyone who's out there, and one thing before I move into some of the more kind of tasks as well too, or some of the tools and tips, I also just want to say that not everything I'm going to share today is going to fit for everybody, and that's totally okay, because we're all individuals and because our families are all different. Some things are going to fit and some things are not, and I support you in that. I support you in trying different things, experimenting with them, figuring out what works and what doesn't. And also just leaving yourself flexible in the sense where this is going to change, right? Like what your family needs right now is not going to be what they need in a year or like 5 years or 10 years, right? Like our kids are going to get older, we're going to get older, and so are our parents. And our family constellations are going to change too, right? New people might join, people will pass away. These things are going to shift. So we're going to need different tools and strategies throughout our lifetimes. And we do need some flexibility around that too. But that said, I do hope you take a few pieces that do fit for you right now and are useful for you today too. So looking at this with compassion, I encourage you to really be curious about yourself and know yourself and your hotspots. Because otherwise we can start feeling like burnt toast, right? And that is not a good feeling. It's so easy for us to kind of start putting ourselves in too many different directions, and trying to do too much and criticizing ourselves in the process. Every single one of us walking on this earth, we all have different strengths and different challenges. And especially true again for ADHDers, right? Like we're going to have good times of day. There's going to be times where it's like, okay, if I try to do paperwork after 5 p.m., I'm not going to be very productive. If I need to have a tough conversation with somebody, is there a good time of day for me to do that? Probably. If I ask my teen at the end of the day to, clean up her room or pick up her laundry or put stuff away or organize stuff, at the end of the day, after her meds are worn off, like that is going to be a frustrating conversation in so many ways. It's a good thing for us to know ourselves and know our family members in that sense. And also optimize that, right? Like if I know, hey, like if she has 5 minutes to tidy up her room in the morning, that's a good time for her. So let's use that instead, rather than trying to kind of go with things as they come, right? Really knowing ourselves is really helpful. And know your hotspots. So all of us have things that kind of get us as well too, that might sort of like irritate us or really kind of grind the gears inside too. Whether that's like clutter or cleaning up after you make a meal or transition times, which I know for like my kiddos, like that is a real challenge. Those things are really difficult. If you know that like organization is a challenge for you, just knowing that and being compassionate with yourself around that And then bringing in some tools or supports, or like if you have a friend who's super good at organization, rope them in, right? Bring them in for you. Listen to blog posts, listens to other resources to kind of get those tools. There's tons of them on the ADDitude website that you can use as well too. So just bring in those tools to support and mitigate as much as you can. The next piece, this sounds so simple. It's not simple. So I don't want anyone to feel that I'm telling you this and expecting you to kind of walk away and be able to like integrate this right away. But practicing acceptance of what is and where things are at is actually a strategy that can take some pressure off us. Because so many folks that I have met and worked with who have ADHD are really good at sensing the emotions of people around them, right? And then wanting to change them sometimes or make things better for people. We want to help sometimes. It's really, really important for us, for our own well-being, and just for the bigger system, is that we kind of know what we can change and we're honest with ourselves about that. And we really accept what we can't change and just for us to know the difference. A pretty common concern that I heard in the comments was that, if someone maybe has a parent who is not on board with seeking an ADHD diagnosis, or they won't see that for themselves. You can have those conversations with them, right? You can chat with them about it. You can show them articles, send them memes. If they're not open to it, that's where they're at. And it doesn't mean you have to like it or agree with it, but just accepting that reality can kind of help us to separate ourselves from that struggle and give us a bit of a sense of peace in it too. And as I say, that's not easy. I don't expect that to be an easy thing. But just kind of working on that and allowing ourselves to say like, okay, I don't like this, but this is the way it is right now, can help us sort of slow that down and then move forward as well too. All right. The next piece that I think is quite important, okay, really important for folks with ADHD and their families, is to use your supports. This is tough because this isn't a fair playing field. I think it's important to think about that some of us might live in bigger cities where there's more resources. Some of us have a way more financial means than others. Some of us who are co-parenting, right? Like that can be a challenge. You might have access to less extended family. If you're living far away from your family in a different country, you're not going to have the same supports that you might have. Or if your community doesn't really support the idea of ADHD, that's going to be a challenge as well too, or the school that your kids go to. But if you do have some supports that are available to you, use your supports. Find those people who are on board for you and who are going to walk with you, who are going to champion you and your family and your kids and help you out, whether that's a paid resource or a community resource, a friend, other folks with ADHD, right? Whether it's an online community. I really encourage you to like cultivate that and find the people who can kind of walk with you and share some of those struggles, right? That common humanity. Even listening to blogs, right? Like, or listening to podcasts. When you hear other people talking about their experience parenting or having elderly parents, it's so normalizing and validating for us. And even if it's challenging for you to find other resources in the community, I really do encourage you to tap into some of those resources as well too. If you have the means, maybe you hire a cleaning service. Maybe you can get an organizer to come in and help you. Maybe you can get some apps. Like, there's different technology that we can utilize as well too. But using those supports and using those tools can lessen the burden for us to feel responsible for sort of managing those executive function challenges and all the things that are kind of floating around us too as we try to navigate the sandwich. The other piece that I think is genuinely challenging for everybody in the world, but especially for folks with ADHD, is boundaries. Again, because so many folks have a little bit of difficulty with that, with the emotional regulation, and they feel things really deeply. They're super feelers, is the emotion-focused family therapy word. For us super feelers, it's tough because if we know someone needs something or wants something, we really want to help. We want to do something about it, right? We want to make them feel better, or we just don't want to feel guilty. So sometimes we can overextend ourselves, and it's so important for us to have those good boundaries, which is a skill, right? Like, it's not something that's just innate for us, but just kind of being able to develop that as well. It's especially challenging, I think, because if we have a parent who has diagnosed or suspected ADHD, they might not have modeled boundaries super well either for the same reasons, right? Maybe that's out of necessity, right? Or maybe just, they just didn't know they were doing the best that they could, trying to keep people happy. There's cultural expectations about, how much we're supposed to be doing as well too. And if your cultural community feels like you're supposed to be helping your family no matter what, that's going to impact you too. And there are gender expectations around boundaries, right? Like it's not uncommon for women in communities to be expected to do a lot and caregive and keep other people happy and stretch ourselves and to turn the bread into a pretzel, right? That we're supposed to be going in all these different directions. And for men to be problem solvers, right? And be able to sort things out for people. So it really is tricky, right? And we're going to feel that even more deeply. But because, again, of that emotion regulation piece and that deep feeling, it makes it especially important for us to have those boundaries and maintain them. So I've created a little bit of a quick cheat sheet, if you want to call it that, for all you jam sandwiches out there, because there are specific challenges, especially for folks with ADHD when it comes to boundaries. For many of us, it's might be hard to say no. If that's the case for you, I would suggest you consider exploring new ways to say it, right? It doesn't have to be a hard no. But there are tons of good resources out there about different alternative ways to say no. And I would encourage you to practice in like a low pressure situation. So, if somebody tries to upsell you when you're, getting a coffee in the morning, practicing your no's there, right? Or practicing them with a friend who you feel really comfortable with. Try out different ways in like low pressure situations and then sort of bringing it forward. Sometimes we just need to repeat ourselves with our no too, right? And standing firm. And that's okay too. Or we can also suggest an alternative, right? Where it's like, Mom, I know you want to talk right now. I'm so sorry. I'm so busy. Can I call you back in half an hour? And they say, no, I got to talk. I'm so sorry. I really can't. I will call you back though, right? And we might need to repeat that a little bit. So just, kind of giving that alternative and putting that out, that can be really helpful. The second one I felt when I was reading your comments as well too, that lots of times we feel like we don't have time for ourselves or we don't have time for self-care. It's so important to remember that self-care does not just mean like a spa day, right? It doesn't mean like a weekend away. It might mean that. But self-care is also taking care of yourself on a day-to-day basis, right? It's just doing those little things that kind of help you feel regulated. It might be as simple as brushing your teeth or having time to take a shower. It's really those little moments. And they can kind of build up and feel like they support us in those ways too. I really encourage you to schedule your self-care, right? Like if you need 15 minutes after a tough meeting to sort of gather yourself and move forward, put it in your schedule, because if you don't, something else will get in your schedule, especially if you have parents who need you and kids who need you, at a workplace possibly that needs you too. It's so important to have those buffers. Because just in case things, they will pop up, right? And if they don't, then you got some self-care time. And you can also decide if you're going to give that time up. The other piece that often comes up is guilt, right? It's your own guilt or others' guilt. Use that self-compassion and that self-talk. And just because you feel the guilt, this is so important, it does not mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you're feeling the guilt, right? We can feel that and still make the choice to protect our boundaries. When it comes to interruptions, let's say, or like intrusions on your space, like if your parents are kind of dropping over without, letting you know they're coming by, and that doesn't work very well for you. Or maybe it's during the pandemic and your kids like to walk into your office sometimes when you're working. Be firm. You could also kind of assess things like, does this need your time right now? Or can you do it later? Maybe just commit to doing it at a later time. I've also used humor with this to, with some success as well too. I think tapping into that can be a really good resource for it as well. But you can kind of play with that too. Mute your phone, put it on airplane mode, right? Like log out of your email. It's okay to do any of those things to protect yourself and your time. The last piece before I kind of move on to my next piece is just to reiterate that creating boundaries is a skill, right? Having those boundaries and setting them. It's not something that we were born with. It's not something that's innate. Some people, maybe have it a little bit easier than others do, but it's also okay just to kind of keep in mind that because it's a skill, we can learn it and hone it and develop it at any time in our life, right? We can carry that with us throughout our lives. All right, so we are going to talk just before we move on about validation. We've got about, I think about 5 minutes left or so. So let's talk a little bit about validation. So validation is a skill that comes out of EFFT literature. So that's emotion focused. I think it's such an important thing for folks with ADHD to validate the other people in our lives, right? To validate our parents or our friends, but also to have that validation skill for ourselves. Validation it sounds like an easy concept, but again, it's a skill. Lots of times when you think that we're validating someone, right? Like, let's say your kiddo comes home and they've had a bad math test, and you say, they're like, "Mom, I failed. Like, I feel awful. I studied so hard." And sometimes our urge is to go like, "Oh, honey, like I know you can do it. It'll be okay. Like, next time, don't worry. You're going to be okay, and I believe in you." It's like, well, that's great, but then you're cheerleading, right? You're not validating. Sometimes we jump into problem solving, right? And we're like, "Oh, let's get you some tutor. Can I call or get you a tutor? Can I call your teacher? Let's go through it together." We're jumping to problem solving. We're trying to be helpful, right? But we're still not kind of getting to the root of it. And that's the big emotion, right? Your kiddo or yourself, you're feeling that big emotion. And I have a picture of elevators here, because if you imagine that when you're feeling that big emotion, when something really difficult happens, it's like the elevator's on the top floor. You can throw all the strategies and problem solving and cheerleading at it in the world, but until that emotion calms down, that elevator gets back down to the ground floor, you're not really getting anywhere. And if you have a kiddo that has big emotions, or a family member, you have big emotions, it's so important for us to like have that validation, that soothing, that regulation before we start the problem solving. So if this resonates for you, I'm going to share this tool from Emotion Focused Family Therapy with you. We can practice validation. There's a bit of a, sorry, I just get this little guy to pop up here. There we go. It's a bit of a 3-step process, or a 1 plus 3-step process. So the first step in validation is just to tell the person, like, I hear that you're feeling devastated right now. Oh my gosh, hear you're feeling angry right now. And then we give our reasons, or why we understand that, with 3 becauses. And those 3 becauses are key, because that shows that we really get it. I hear that you're feeling disappointed right now, right? Like, you're so bummed because you failed a math test. And that totally makes sense. You feel that way because you studied so hard, and because you usually do really well in math, and because I know you don't want to disappoint your teacher. And each time we use those becauses, it's like the elevator comes down just like 1 floor, just kind of keeps coming down. And you can kind of check in with the person. So it's because your teacher, you really don't want to disappoint your teacher. Yeah. And your team might be like, yeah, that's exactly it. And you're like, oh man, that sounds really hard. And they're like, yeah, it is. And then you might have some more becauses, right? Like, well, yeah, no, because if you fail this test, does that mean you just stay in for recess? Well, yeah, I did. It's like, oh man, that's really, that's a bummer, right? I hate to hear that. And you'll sense it, right? Like that feeling where things kind of come down. That's when you can be like, oh man, do you need a hug, right? That problem solving offers some comfort. That's where you can kind of bring in those tools. Or like, oh, I'm so sorry. Do you want a snack? Do you want to sit down later? We'll go through it together. That's where you can offer the problem solving. But with validation, it's something that you can use for yourself. It's something that you can use for parents if they're having big emotions, and it's something that you can use for your kiddos. And again, this comes from emotion-focused family therapy literature from Adele LaFrance and Natasha Files as well too. So I want to just credit them for that as well. I know that we are coming right up to time. Annie, is that kind of your thought as well too?
Yes, I'm ready for Q&A whenever you are, Danna, but we're okay if you have a few last points you want to wrap up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking I have one more slide I'd just like to share as well too, just before we jump into that. And I'll kind of go through it a little bit more quickly than I normally would, but I just want to bring it back as a starting point as well too, or as an ending point, to take forward the idea of like, would I say this to a friend? Because we all know when we're feeling hard on ourselves, we can be really cruel. We can be mean to ourselves. If you find yourself in that situation, right, where you have a negative self-talk, or you're putting lots of pressure on yourself to get so much done, or telling yourself all the things that you didn't do, just pause, take a breath, ground yourself if you need to, and just ask yourself, would I say this to a friend? The answer might be no, right? And then you can ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? So if you can use that tool, I really like visual reminders, particularly when we've got those executive functioning challenges. So if you want to put a little sticky note somewhere, or like write it on your mirror, put it somewhere where you can remember, put it on your phone lock screen, just like, would I say this to a friend? just to kind of remind yourself and to kind of keep that top of mind for you as well too. Before we go to questions too, I meant to give a quick shout out at the beginning of our presentation today too, and I didn't. But I just want to add that as well now to one of my colleagues at the university, Dr. Kim Kiley. Kim is a friend and colleague of mine too, and we've had some fantastic conversations about ADHD, and she's shared so much expertise with me too. So I just wanted to put that out there as well too before we move to the Q&As.
Wonderful. Danna, thank you so much for this presentation. There's a lot of good takeaways. And before we get into the Q&A, I will quickly thank Play Attention once more for sponsoring today's webinar. And then I'm going to take a page from your playbook because I really love this concept of validation. And so I'm going to dovetail that with the survey that our registrants took at the beginning of this webinar. And I'm going to say, you know, what I'm hearing and what I know from my personal experience is that being the jam in the sandwich is really hard. And it's hard for the reasons we see in this survey. Number one, the emotional strain and stress is significant. So 21% of you said that that was your one of your top 3 primary challenges. It's also really tough right behind that because of overwhelm. I mean, there's just no way to change the fact that there are 24 hours in a day and that we're exhausted, right? By the end of the day, there's no quick fix. There's no easy fix. That's just hard. This kind of is a repeat of number 3, which was almost 17%. So the lack of time and bandwidth for self-care, right? When you have a to-do list that is 25 items long every day, yoga is going to fall off every single time,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
it's so tough, right? Because the list never ends, right? There's always going to be something else for us to do.
Absolutely. So I'm validating right now based on this data, and you guys can take this home with you and remind yourselves that the data shows that this is really hard, and that, you know, everyone is doing absolutely the best that they can. And I think that kind of goes into maybe one of the first questions that we got here. And that is from someone asking, you know, they are the jam and they were not modeled emotional control and regulation as a child. And now they absolutely see the value of it, but they are trying to put in place systems in their household to teach emotional control to their children and their parents. Can you offer any advice for getting everyone on board with some strategies to bring the temperature down in the house?
Yeah, I guess they didn't share if everyone's living under, like everyone's in one house, or is that?
That's a good question.
I'd have to. That would change things too. Yeah.
Yeah, it would. I don't think that they specified.
Okay, that's fair. You know, I think like what they've said about you know, not having that modeled for them as when they were growing up is such a common experience, right? And I think the vast majority of parents were doing the best that they could with the tools that they had, right? And that's, you know, based on culture and you know, the generation they were in and the tools they had available, and you know, so many different pieces. You know, just recognizing like emotion regulation, that's skills, right? Like it's not, again, something that's innate, and it's something that we can learn throughout our lives as well too. I think, you know, as much as possible, like different things are going to work for different kiddos and different parents as well too. So there is a bit of experimentation, right? To kind of like find out what works and find out what fits, you know, playing around with that a little bit too. And as much as possible, like making it fun. Kids love movement, right? Like I think that's an often, I think as adults, we like movement too. But finding different things that are like active ways to engage and that emotion regulation as well, especially for kids. This is a great fit with our sponsor for today as well too. The idea of like using play and play-based methods as ways to teach emotion regulation. Books about emotion regulation can be really helpful for kids as well too. But being curious about it, and again, like with the executive function challenges that most people with ADHD are facing too, is having those reminders in different places, right? So if you feel silly putting a sticky note on your door, you don't need to, right? Because it's your house and you get to do what you do what fits for you, right? Do what's going to be the best for you and your family. And it does sometimes having that visual cue sort of, gives us that little nudge, that little reminder, to pause and take a breath before I walk out the door, or check that everything's in my bag. But just using those visual tools can be really helpful too.
Okay, wonderful. And on the theme of kind of tips and tricks, a couple of people have asked, like, can you offer a few examples of what compassionate or kind self-talk sounds like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we were to imagine, goodness, I'm just thinking about like what average self-talk might be if let's say if you lose your keys, right? I'm going to use that example just because that's something that's not unfamiliar to my household. You lose your keys and you're like, oh, I did it again. Everyone's going to be mad at me. People are going to like laugh at me or make fun of me. If we were to shift that, even just starting with noticing, right? And just being like, oh, I lost my keys. You pause, kind of maybe notice what's happening inside for you, right? And just naming your emotion as well too. Oh, I lost my keys again. I feel really disappointed in myself. This is really hard, right? Like sometimes this makes me feel like a failure, a scatterbrain. But this happens to other people too, right? I had a really busy day. I was thinking of too many things at once. It's not good that it happened, but it doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. This happens to lots of people with ADHD. This is one of the struggles. It's not just me. It's a solvable problem, right? It's something that we can kind of work through too. You might even just tell yourself, like, whoa, this feels really bad, but like, don't beat yourself up. You don't deserve that. Or also asking yourself like, okay, what would I say to a friend? And you might validate their feelings. Oh, I know that's going to be so frustrating, right? Like now you got to go get your keys made. Maybe you change your locks. Maybe your landlord is upset with you. That is really frustrating. We all do it sometimes, right? Like it's not just you, and just that validation again too. So it's a bit of a melding of both of those tools. But I think that at the beginning, it's pause, notice what's happening for yourself emotionally, and then use that gentle supportive language that you'd use with someone else.
Okay, great. Because this dovetails with another question that we received from a parent who said that their parent, the grandparent, really does see their grandchild's ADHD symptoms when they manifest as like a character or a respect issue, and not as a symptom of a neurological condition. So can we offer some help to explain ADHD in a way that can mend this relationship and get the parent out of that referee role, which we know is so exhausting?
It kind of sounds like the grandparent in that situation is maybe like trying to discipline the grandchild, or like lecturing maybe, or something along those lines.
That's what I'm hearing here. And I'm hearing it from other people saying that this might be particularly true when the grandparent themselves has ADHD and is not diagnosed or treated.
Yeah. And that's a tricky one too, because I think that some of that's that, stigma about mental health or emotions or ADHD that sometimes we're carrying right from different places. And our parents or grandparents might be carrying that as well too. And even just recognizing that like there might be that stigma inside, right? Where it's something that's maybe bigger than the individual who's holding those beliefs as well. One thing I can imagine in the situation when you see that happening, if you got a little bit of your own impulsivity, you want to intervene in the moment, right? I would say, and I would suggest as much as possible, have those conversations at a different time, right? Like maybe you go out for coffee and you're like, Mom, talk a little bit about like when my kiddo starts throwing things, let's say, or has really big feelings, and you're kind of encouraging me to discipline them in this particular way. Can we talk about that a little bit and just kind of put that on the table? Have that discussion at a separate time, ideally at a time that you can kind of both agree on. Kind of create that, set the stage, if you will, right? Like, or set the table, and just have that discussion at a time when you're calm and grounded. You can prepare for it. If it helps to share a little bit of like information about ADHD with them, if they're open to that, that can be really helpful. Sometimes it helps too to kind of talk about maybe some of the, the symptoms in a non-clinical way, in terms of like, what it might feel like to have ADHD, or what kind of things someone might struggle with. I mean, in an ideal world, the grandparent might sort of see that in themselves as well too, but that might not be the case. But I would say super important to have those discussions at a time when it's not right in the heat of the moment, because everyone's emotions are going to be running high then too. Probably not going to be productive. Yeah, and it's tricky because I'm just thinking that the grandparent themselves is also probably struggling with some impulse control when they see something that they're perceiving, as a willful behavior or misbehavior, when it's part of the ADHD as well too. And extending compassion to yourself, and also, to your kiddo and the grandparent too, just recognizing that they're holding those beliefs for a particular reason. You may not be able to change that, but you can have those boundaries for yourself and your child to make it feel emotionally safe.
Okay, great. And, I just want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people here today saying that, they are like 95% sure that their parent, or perhaps their parent-in-law, does have ADHD symptoms, and they were not ever diagnosed or seeking treatment. And they're wondering whether it is really their place to try to educate them on a diagnosis. I mean, I can understand how that is going to be awkward and add another strain. At the same time, if your parent does seek treatment, it is going to probably improve everyone's life. So you're incentivized to have that conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so delicate, right? I think it can be a delicate conversation, and it's going to, so much of it, right, is also going to depend on the relationship that you have with your parent, or with that in-law, or with a grandparent, or whomever it will be. Like there's, each of us are, those relationships are nuanced, and there's probably not like one answer that's going to be a one size fit all kind of approach. You kind of know them, right? And just kind of keeping that in consideration as well too. Just to share a little bit of my own personal story. From my mom, she kind of came across this out of her own accord. She gets a monthly retirees magazine, and there was actually an article in there about older adults with ADHD. And through reading that, she actually contacted me and was like Danna, so much of this resonates for me, right? Like this is I do this and I do this, and named quite a few of the pieces that really, she saw herself in as well too. And that was really helpful because she kind of come across it in her own time. And to be honest, it wasn't necessarily something that I had seen it through that lens either. But it was really a transformative shift for us in our relationship, because things that had felt so personal for me in the past, like so personal, all of a sudden I saw them through this lens of ADHD, and it's not something that she was doing willfully or on purpose, or to kind of get under my skin, on my nerves. It's been such a huge shift for us too, right? And whether or not your parent or your grandparent would choose treatment or medication, even just understanding some of the things that they might be struggling with, whether it's an executive function challenge or emotional regulation concerns, sometimes for them too, that can just sort of shed light on why is it so hard for me to get rid of stuff? Or, why do I sort of say things and then regret it afterwards? Or, maybe why have I used, a particular coping method throughout my life, even when I know that wasn't a good idea? It can be so helpful. Maybe even sharing a link or sharing an article that's, that you find helpful. Again, it's going to depend on that relationship that you have too. So I wish there was one answer for this I could give, but it is really dependent on your own family constellation too.
Mm-hmm. And I will make a plug, if you have a family member who you think would read it, ADDitude has a few great articles about how, that we will put in the resources for this webinar, about how ADHD does manifest in older adults, and also a few testimonials from folks who were diagnosed in their 70s and 80s who say that it really transformed their lives with or without treatment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some of them chose not to or couldn't for medical reasons, and there's still benefit there. So we'll pull together some of those, because it sounds like that might be helpful for some of our attendees today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it can really shift someone's just the relationship that they have with themselves as well, to understanding themselves in that different way. And that can change our relationships as well, right? So I think if you could share some of those articles, that would be excellent.
Of course. And you mentioned coping mechanisms. So we know from research that people with undiagnosed and untreated ADHD do have a higher prevalence for, self-medicating. And that often can mean alcohol use. And a couple of people here saying that this is a boundary issue, right? They have an older parent who has been self-medicating through alcohol and some cigarettes. That's a tough one, about setting that boundary and sort of refusing to support that self-medication. Any advice for those people who see their parents with, destructive habits that you can understand why it's happening, but it just is sort of untenable to live with?
Absolutely. Oh, it's such a tricky thing, right? Because it's like, we love them. We don't agree with what they're doing to cope. And I think it's important to recognize that it is a coping strategy. But that doesn't necessarily change the way that we're going to feel about it as well, too. Your safety and your family's safety comes first too, right? So if that alcohol use or any other sort of coping behavior creates a safety concern for, yourself or when your kiddos or a different family member, that's got to be your first priority. And sometimes we have to be really firm with our boundaries in those regards. So that's okay. I want to give you permission to do what you need to do to take good care of yourself as well. If it's, if you want to set a boundary where there's no alcohol at family gatherings, well, that's absolutely your prerogative as well. It's a very difficult thing though, too, because, if they are in let's say a pre-contemplative place with changing that behavior, it can be challenging for you to kind of push them in that direction. So taking care of yourself in the best way that you can as well, too, getting support, talking it out with other people who get it. If you have siblings who are on the same page as you or friends, if there's resources in your community for folks that are, working through alcohol use or other substance use issues, reach out, right? Like use those resources, get that support. Because again, that isolation is one of the very hardest things. And so often when I see people who join groups or even online communities, one of the most helpful things is knowing that you're not alone and hearing other people's stories, because you're getting tools and, anecdotes and things that you can relate to. And oftentimes they're things that you can actually use in your own relationships as well, too.
Yes. And we have had a few people ask whether you know of any support groups specifically for the jam, whether neurodivergent or not. I mean, there are obviously issues here that are specific to neurodivergent families, but even just any sandwich support.
That's a great, different communities are going to have different things too, right? There's going to have, there should be some locally. Or there may be some locally, I don't want to say should, but depending on the size of your community, there may be caregivers support groups locally as well too. Do I know of any specific to neurodivergent families? Off the top of my head, I don't. Maybe that's something that would be a great thing, to develop as well too. Certainly I'm hearing that there would definitely be a need for it as well. And it's going to be a growing area. But I do think even just, again, like listening to podcasts and blogs and ADDitude magazine is just a wealth of resources as well too in this regard. And even just that, like reading about or hearing about other people's experiences can be so validating for people.
Yes. I will mention ADDitude does have, if you are active on Facebook at all, we do have 2 Facebook groups, one group for adults with ADHD and another for parents of children with ADHD. We understand there's overlap, but there tend to be some questions that are specific to one or the other. So as a first stop, that might be something to look at. Those groups are quite active, and our members are really wonderful about posting their solutions to everyday problems. So
it's so helpful, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that lived experience is just so valuable.
Absolutely. Well, I have the bad news to share that we are out of time for today. Danna, thank you so much for joining us today, for contributing your voice to our ADHD community, and for giving us some solutions to get started here today.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. I hope everyone takes really good care, and I wish everyone all the best.
And I also want to thank today's listeners. If you would like to access the resources from today's podcast or today's webinar, you can go to ADDitudeMag.com and search for podcast number 490. You'll find the slides and the recording there. If you're listening in replay mode, you can just click on the episode description to get all those resources. And please know that our full library of ADDitude webinars is available as a podcast. It is called the ADHD Experts podcast, and it is on all of the streaming platforms, all of them. And we hope you will join us next week. We have a very special live conversation with YouTube personality Jessica McCabe. She is the personality behind How to ADHD, and she has a brand new book out by that title. So we hope you will join us for that, and that you will sign up so you don't miss any of our webinars at ADDitudeMag.com/newsletters. Danna, thank you again, and have a great day, everybody.